Hello, this is the Grace Baptist Mission Media Podcast. You're about to hear a programme from the Serving Today archive. We trust that you enjoy it and find it helpful. Welcome to Serving Today, the programme for pastors and church leaders. I'm Andrew Cook, and it's good to be with you again. Pastoral Integrity. Ian Flanders continues with his series. Luke Jenner joins us again for our look at the doctrine of the Trinity. Last time, as we discussed the Trinity, it was recognised that this doctrine isn't specifically mentioned in the Bible. There is no one passage that directly defines it for us, says Luke Jenner.
Remember, it's essentially by the historical act of redemption that we know about the Trinity, not by any one particular passage or passages which lay down the doctrine in its fullness, like a systematic theology textbook would, but we rather get our understanding from various scriptures. We gather the elements of the doctrine from numerous texts, and so there are a few kinds of texts I would go to. First, there'd be ones that teach that God is one. God is one and one only. So the classic text for that is Deuteronomy 6 verse 4.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one.
And then also texts which say that God is unique. He is the only God there is. Isaiah 44 verse 6, I am the first and I am the last. Besides me there is no God. You'll find all that kind of teaching throughout the Old Testament particularly. Only one God, there are to be no idols. He alone is the true God.
On those passages that teach the oneness of God, what practical applications would you derive from those passages?
In teaching that there's only one God, that is the fundamental in the Ten Commandments and in living as a follower of that God, that there are to be none others, no competitors. We must worship him alone. To realise then that God is the King of all things, he is sovereign, there is nothing outside his control, and all the ways in which that will impact our lives from day to day in our trust of him and our reliance upon him, that he is not a small deity, he is not powerless, but he is infinite in every way, and there can be no equal to him whatsoever. That's surely an assuring doctrine for us as Christians.
Because of course the Deuteronomy passage was very much a contrast with the polytheism of the surrounding nations.
It was something which the Israelites had to learn, perhaps over time as well, that really idolatry was a major problem, of course, throughout Israel's history, even though they're constantly being reminded not to worship other gods. Yet finally they had to be taught in the most severe way through the exile that they could have no idols and that God was the only God there is.
So to understand the doctrine of the Trinity, we need to look at those passages that teach that God is one and that he is unique. And because of this, God requires of his people undivided loyalty and obedience. But we also need to examine passages from the Bible that teach that God is more than one person.
The Bible teaches very clearly that there is only one God, but more than one person, one distinct individual as it were, is that one God. And so we primarily need to look at the New Testament after, as I was saying, this revelation through redemption has occurred, because there it's just assumed. Suddenly we discover all over the place that there's not just this one God, but Jesus Christ, he's God. The Holy Spirit, he's God as well. The same God that's been proclaimed all the way through the Old Testament. And so you'd look first to see that the Father is that one God. That's most natural because that's, in a sense, always been assumed throughout the Old Testament. But you could go to, say, 1 Corinthians 8 verse 6.
For us there is but one God, the Father, from whom all things came and for whom we live.
But then the more important text, in a sense, for the Trinity is those that teach about Christ and the Spirit. And that was revolutionary to a monotheistic Israelite religion. You can't miss the fact that the apostles are teaching that Jesus Christ is God.
John chapter 1 verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Hebrews chapter 1 verse 8. But about the Son he says, Your throne, O God, will last forever and ever.
He has the attributes of deity. He is worshipped by people, and angels in the New Testament refuse worship, but Jesus Christ welcomes it and accepts it from Peter, from Thomas, from the hosts of heaven. He does the works of God. He does things which only God can do. He forgives sins. And so it's very clear throughout the New Testament that Jesus Christ is the God that has always been.
We thought about the oneness of God and that God is more than one person. What is true about God the Father is also true about God the Son. For example, when Jesus calms a storm at the end of Mark chapter 4, the disciples ask each other, "Who is this?" The only possible answer is that Jesus is the Son of God, because he has power over nature. Only God can do that. Next time we'll focus on passages that tell us about God the Holy Spirit. In a moment we'll hear from Derek French to introduce the next part in our series on pastoral integrity.
We welcome Ian Flanders back with us today. We're currently looking at the whole subject of pastoral integrity. And if you were able to listen last time, you will have understood why integrity is important. If we lack integrity, if we behave in a way that is in contradiction with the Bible teaching, then that will affect the way others think of the church, the gospel, and even of God. Ian, what are you going to deal with today?
Well, I propose that we look at the question of spiritual accountability.
Well, can you tell us what accountability is and what does it mean to be accountable to someone?
Yes, when we're accountable to someone, the person we're accountable to has the right to know certain things about us. He has the right to ask us to explain our actions and our behaviour. He has the right to expect certain things of us and to correct or reprimand us if we've done any wrong.
Could you give us some examples to help us understand this concept?
Certainly, Derek. For example, school children are accountable to their teachers. They're expected to behave in a certain way, and if they don't, the teacher has the right to ask why and to correct them. Pupils should do their homework, and in this they are accountable to their teachers. If they haven't done their homework, then the teacher has the right to ask why. It's the same kind of relationship between a worker and an employer. If you've been employed to do a certain job, then the employer expects that job to be done properly. If it's not done properly, then he has the right to know why, to ask why. And if the answers aren't satisfactory, the employer has the right to sanction the employee. So the worker is accountable to his employer in his job. In a sense, to be accountable to someone is to have someone over you. It's to behave as if someone is watching you.
So where do we stand on this question as pastors and church leaders?
If we're involved as leaders in Christian ministry, then first and foremost, we're accountable to God. To paraphrase Jonathan Lamb, a Christian leader who has written on this subject, we are to lead in the knowledge that God is watching. It's part of human nature that we always put on our best show, our best behaviour, when we know that someone important is watching. A child will often refrain from doing certain things when his parents are around. A child may behave well in class when his teacher is watching, but as soon as he's out in the playground, he might be rather naughty. If we went through life in the knowledge that our every movement, even our every thought, was being recorded by some form of supercomputer, and that this computer could be accessed by anyone wanting to know something about us, well, just think how much that would change our behaviour.
Yes, that's very thought-provoking, isn't it? And yet, of course, we know that God is watching. He knows everything about us, even those thoughts, feelings and motivations that we might manage to keep hidden from other people.
Yes, and this is my point, Derek. As Christian leaders, we mustn't think that we're free agents or that we can do what we please. No, we're accountable to God, we're answerable to God. We belong to God and He has redeemed us through the blood sacrifice of His Son. That means that God has every right to expect certain things of us, and all the more so if we're serving Him and ministering in His name, for His reputation is at stake. Now, when the Apostle Paul was defending his ministry and appealing to his integrity, he would often use phrases such as, "God is my witness," or "in the sight of Christ," or "what we are is plain to God," or "before God," or "out of reverence for God," or even "before the judgment seat of Christ." These are just a few examples amongst many others. To sum up, God sees and knows all that we do, and he also cares deeply about our integrity and can give either approval or disapproval. Ultimately, God has the right to correct and to discipline. The Apostle Paul, and I'm sure the others as well, knew that he was accountable to God, and this instilled in him a deep commitment to integrity. We too must minister and lead, being deeply conscious that God is watching. We're accountable to God, and this knowledge must affect the way we behave. However, whilst this is our first line of accountability, I don't believe that it stops there.
So what other lines of accountability do you have in mind, Ian?
Well, firstly, I believe that pastors and church leaders or elders are accountable to the churches they are serving. They don't have the right to do as they please, and they don't have some kind of diplomatic immunity that protects them from all charge. Of course, all this needs to be handled very carefully. However, churches can expect their pastor to behave biblically. They must expect him to undertake ministry on their behalf. And if he fails in any serious way, the church has the right to ask why. And if things don't change, they have the right to bring disciplinary proceedings upon the pastor. Now, we can't expand really on this now, but it's so necessary to mention. Pastors are accountable to their congregation. Another lesson I'd want to underline is that many pastors find it very helpful to have some form of private and voluntary accountability to another mature Christian or pastor. In this type of confidential relationship, pastor can talk about concerns and weaknesses, even areas of temptation, and he can be given advice and support. The person he is accountable to can ask searching questions on relevant areas of the pastor's life and ministry, and he can expect to get honest answers. In this way, when things start to go wrong, they can often be detected early and corrected before serious damage is done. Also, being in this kind of accountable relationship gives protection and helps many to resist different temptations.
Well, on that note, we have to conclude for today, but we would encourage all leaders to practice this form of accountability wherever possible, and above all, to never forget that we are accountable before God.
Well, I trust you found today's programme thought-provoking and challenging in a practical sense. Join us next time here on Serving Today as we continue to look at how the Bible points to our Trinitarian God. And Ian Flanders will be talking about servanthood in the series on Pastoral Integrity. So, this is Andrew Cook saying goodbye. The Lord enable, keep and uphold each of his servants. That was Serving Today, a podcast from the Grace Baptist Mission Radio team. To get in touch with us, you can email us. The address is servingtoday@gbm.org.uk. On social media, you can follow Serving Today on X, Facebook, Instagram and Blue Sky. And there's the entire Serving Today back catalogue on our webpage. Go to www.gbm.org.uk/listen. Until next time, goodbye.